Both Rebecca and Michael are in long-term relationships. From the outside, both relationships look functional. Dinner together, shared routines, appropriate displays of affection. But the internal experience of their partners reveals the crucial difference. Rebecca's partner David has learned to live with a peculiar kind of loneliness. Rebecca is always present physically, always responsive socially, but there's a quality of absence that's hard to articulate. When David shares something important to him, Rebecca says appropriate things. When he's upset, she provides appropriate comfort. But David feels like he's interacting with a very sophisticated program rather than a person. There's no authentic emotional resonance, no sense that his feelings are landing anywhere real. What David doesn't experience is abuse. Rebecca doesn't manipulate him, doesn't gaslight him, doesn't punish him for perceived slights. She's just absent, hollow. When David eventually ends the relationship, it's not because Rebecca has hurt him. It's because he realizes he's been alone the entire time despite being in a relationship. Rebecca takes the breakup calmly, adjusts her performance for the single life, and moves on. No wound because there's no self to wound. Michael's partner Sarah has a very different experience, and it's become increasingly nightmarish. At first, Michael seemed perfect. Attentive, charming, intensely focused on her. But Sarah has learned that Michael's focus isn't love. It's measurement. He's constantly gauging whether she's providing adequate admiration, whether she's properly impressed, whether she's reflecting back the grandiose image he needs to maintain. When Sarah occasionally fails to provide that perfect mirroring when she's tired and less enthusiastic about his achievements, when she's distracted by her own concerns, when she gently criticizes something he's done, Michael responds with what clinicians call narcissistic rage. Sometimes it's over anger. Sometimes it's cold withdrawal designed to punish her. Sometimes it's subtle undermining of her confidence, making her feel like she's the problem. Sarah has learned to walk on eggshells, constantly monitoring Michael's mood, ensuring her responses provide the validation his false self demands. She's exhausted, anxious, starting to doubt her own perceptions because Michael rewrites reality to protect his grandiose self-image. When Sarah eventually escapes the relationship, it will be traumatic. She needs therapy to recover from the psychological abuse. The difference is stark. Rebecca's relationship ended because of absence. Michael's relationship is ending because of presence. The presence of a false self that demands constant validation and punishes any threat to its grandiosity. Both lack a real ego, but only Michael's void is filled with something that can hurt you. Jung's theory of the psyche helps us understand what's actually happening structurally in these two conditions. In a healthy, integrated person, the persona is just one component of a larger psychological architecture. There's a strong ego that serves as the center of consciousness, observing experience, and making authentic choices. There's a shadow containing rejected aspects of self. There's connection to the unconscious, providing depth and authentic feeling. The persona serves this integrated whole, helping it adapt to different social contexts. Both Rebecca and Michael lack this architecture. Neither has a real ego. Neither has integrated their shadow. Neither has genuine connection to their unconscious. They're both just persona with nothing beneath it. But what fills that void is radically different. Rebecca's void is truly empty. There's the persona adapting to social requirements, and beneath it, nothing. No measuring system evaluating performance success. No wounded pride. No grandiose self-image to defend. Just absence. When her performance fails, the persona notes the failure and adjusts, but there's no emotional charge to the process. It's like a thermostat registering that the temperature is wrong and adjusting accordingly. No self is involved. Michael's void is filled with what psychologists call a grandiose false self. This isn't a real ego in Jung's sense. It's not a center of authentic consciousness. It's a compensatory structure, desperately trying to maintain an illusion of superiority, specialness, perfection. And crucially, this false self is hypersensitive to any indication that the performance isn't working. Every social interaction is measured by Michael's false self against one question: did I get the response that confirms my grandiosity? When someone questions him, doesn't seem impressed, fails to provide adequate admiration, or sees through the performance, the false self experiences this as a catastrophic threat. The grandiose illusion is in danger of collapsing, and the false self responds with rage, manipulation, and attacks designed to restore the illusion. This is why narcissists can be so dangerous. That hypersensitive measuring system behind the persona is constantly detecting threats and responding with psychological warfare. Rebecca's emptiness makes her unavailable for genuine intimacy, but Michael's false self makes him actively harmful. Both conditions represent psychological incompleteness, but the specific nature of that incompleteness matters enormously. If you're trying to help someone like Rebecca or someone like Michael, Jung's framework reveals why they require completely different approaches. Rebecca needs to develop an ego from scratch. She needs to discover that there can be an authentic self beneath the social performance, that genuine preferences and feelings exist, that she's more than just adaptive response patterns. This is difficult, but not impossible. Through therapy, Rebecca can slowly develop that observing center of consciousness. She can learn to ask, what do I actually feel about this? And wait for an answer that comes from somewhere deeper than social calculation. She can begin integrating her shadow, acknowledging the aspects of herself she's rejected in favor of pure adaptability. She can connect with her unconscious through dream work, active imagination, and simply learning to sit with herself without performing. The process is like teaching someone to recognize they exist as a subject, not just as a social object. It's slow, often uncomfortable, but fundamentally hopeful. Rebecca isn't invested in remaining empty. She's just never known there was an alternative. Michael's situation is far more complex and considerably more resistant to change. The grandiose false self isn't just absence, it's a structure actively defending itself against reality. Michael doesn't experience himself as empty. He experiences himself as superior, special, uniquely gifted. Any attempt to help him develop a real ego requires dismantling the false self, and the false self will fight desperately to prevent this. When therapists try to help Michael develop authentic self-awareness, the false self interprets this as attack. When they encourage him to acknowledge his ordinary humanity, his flaws, his genuine feelings beneath the grandiose image, the false self responds with rage or contempt. The therapist becomes another threat to be defeated. Many narcissists leave therapy as soon as it threatens the grandiose illusion. More troublingly, Michael often doesn't seek help for himself. He seeks help to fix the people around him who aren't providing adequate admiration, or he's forced into therapy by ultimatums from partners or employers. The false self doesn't recognize itself as faults. It experiences itself as the truth that others are failing to properly recognize. This is why relationships with narcissists are so much more damaging than relationships with people who are simply emotionally absent. Rebecca will waste your time and leave you feeling lonely. Michael will actively harm you, undermine your reality, and potentially traumatize you. Both are tragic psychological conditions, but only one poses active danger to others. So how do you tell them apart in real life? Both Rebecca and Michael will seem charming, socially skilled, perhaps even magnetic. Both lack authentic emotional depth. Both are primarily performance. But watch what happens when the performance fails or is challenged. Rebecca will adjust smoothly, showing no signs of injury. She might seem oddly unaffected by criticism that would wound most people, but she also won't punish you for delivering it. There's an emptiness to her response, but not a threat. Michael will show micro expressions of rage, even if he maintains surface composure. He'll remember the challenge, and you'll pay for it somehow. There's a threat in his emptiness, a sense that behind the performance lurks something that's been wounded and wants revenge. Both conditions represent what happens when the persona operates without a real ego to ground it. But Rebecca is persona plus void, while Michael is persona plus grandiose false self desperately measuring audience response. The void is sad. The false self is dangerous. Jung's framework gives us language for this crucial distinction. Not all psychological emptiness is the same. Some voids are simply empty. Others are filled with something hypersensitive, grandiose, and potentially destructive. Recognizing the difference might save you years of confusion or protect you from significant harm. Both are missing the same thing, a real ego, an authentic self. But what fills that absence makes all the difference in the world.